It's become an industry norm that if you want to take good photos using a smartphone, either you need a very expensive smartphone or probably a smartphone with dual camera. But the budget camera smartphones are catching up really well off. But as a wise man once said, good smartphones are becoming cheap and cheap smartphones are becoming good. So today in this video, we'll have a look at if this cheap smartphone can really live up to its expectation. As I said, the budget smartphones are really catching up well, and the players like Xiaomi are pushing out really good smartphones into the market at a very affordable prices. Recently, Xiaomi launched this new handset which is the Redmi Note 4, and the pricing of the smartphone was really competitive. They basically released three different variants of the smartphone, which is a 2GB, 3GB and the 4GB version. What I currently have here is a 2GB version. It costs somewhere around 10,000 rupees in Indian market, and the sake of this video is to check if the camera performance of these budget smartphones are anyway close to being acceptable. And I didn't opt for the 3 or the 4GB version because the pricing there, it goes up to around 13 to 14,000, which is a category which is primarily dominated by players like Honor 6X or the Moto G series smartphones. So let's get started and see how this camera performs. But before that, let's do a quick unboxing. For the sake of this review, I didn't want to shoot anything indoor or probably in my terrace garden. So I took out this phone and went for a short 4-hour photo walk, and I just tried to check how this camera performs under different lighting conditions and under different shooting conditions. So all the photos what you see now on are shot completely with the Redmi Note 4, the 2GB version. The first impression about this camera is that it is really responsive and snappy. So when I say responsive and snappy, I mean that it's pretty quick, and I can quickly fire up the app and I can take photos without losing any important moment. And the best thing about this smartphone is that the camera is a 13 megapixel f2.0 sensor, and also it comes with face detect autofocus. And for the folks who don't know the different autofocusing modes in your cameras, you can check out my other video wherein I have discussed about all the different types of autofocus modes, especially even in the smartphone cameras. So as I said, the focusing is pretty quick when you're taking photos, and the images are very detailed, and you get a lot of acceptable dynamic range in the images, especially when you're shooting in mixed lighting condition. Most of the photos are shot in the auto mode in this particular camera, with the HDR feature turned on. Even in the low light, the camera performs really well, especially when it comes to the detail and the noise performance. One thing that really surprised me when it comes to this camera was the way it handled the colors. I didn't notice any specific color shift, especially when you're shooting very bright colors or even the regular day-to-day greens and browns. Even in the low light situation, the way the colors were handled were pretty decent, and also there was not much of a warm or a cold shift when it comes to the white balance when you're shooting indoors using artificial light. The camera also comes with a panorama mode, which is pretty decent, and it does a good job, and there is nothing very great to talk about it, and even in extreme lighting condition it performs really well. I use this camera in sort of like extreme contrast situations, as you can see in these photos, and the HDR mode did a very good job in preserving the details in the shadow region without actually introducing any noticeable noise. The highlights were a little bit blown off, but I think that's the max what you can expect. While I was glancing through the modes in this particular phone, I came across this manual mode, and when I actually opted for this mode when I was shooting, I was surprised that it gives you only white balance and ISO control. Apparently it's a bummer that they call it as a manual mode when they give only the control of ISO and white balance, because in a DSLR this is actually called program auto and not the manual mode. Moving over to the videos, the camera performed really well, and I tried it out in different lighting conditions. It's like high contrast situation and also in bright sunlight. The camera did a very good job, especially in the video segment, but there is one drawback which I'll probably come back later on in this video. Another mode that I tried out on this camera was a time-lapse feature, which again was a little bit of disappointing because when you opt for time-lapse option in this particular phone, there is no detailed control on the interval or the duration. What this phone basically does is it shoots video and it compresses the video in a more of like a fast-forward way to make it project like a time-lapse, and this is not exactly a very right way of implementation of time-lapse. This is more of like a frugal approach, but it does a job. Maybe some people want to speeden it up much more to suit their need, but I think the time-lapse mode could have been implemented much better than what it is right now. Finally, I want to talk about few drawbacks that I noticed in this particular camera. First thing is the implementation of shutter speed. I noticed in few of my images that even though I was shooting in broad daylight, there was a noticeable motion blur in the images, and I was pretty much surprised on why or how this happened. And I think this is something to do with the way the camera is handling the shutter speed and aperture combination when you're shooting in broad daylight. This is something which can be fixed in the firmwares, but you can notice it in few of the images here. It was shot in broad daylight, but still there is a noticeable amount of motion blur in the images. The second most disappointing thing in this camera was the audio which comes when you're recording the video, and there was a very noticeable suppression in the audio quality. I personally feel that it is something to do with the noise cancellation that the camera is trying to do when you're recording video, and thereby it's reducing the audio quality. And this again is something which probably can be handled by firmware updates. I also have a quick sample which is recorded indoor, which you can see now. Right now what you're seeing is a video directly from the Redmi Note 4, and this is being recorded in full HD. I'm indoor and I'm lit by LED lights, and even here you can notice that the audio is not really up to the mark. And I have tried using hands-free with this phone, and I tried probably 3 different brands, but despite that I don't think so the quality has improved much when it comes to the audio when you're recording the video. So this is something probably which can be fixed using the firmware update, but the folks from Xiaomi can confirm this, and let's see if there is any update that comes to the camera which can fix all this issue that we're discussing. And last but not the least, though it is not of a higher priority, the time-lapse implementation could have been a lot better than what it is right now, and just recording video and showing it in a fast-forward way is not the actual way of time-lapse. Finer controls like interval and duration could have been given, which probably we can use third-party app and still do it, but it would be better if the camera manufacturers themselves give this option than we opting to purchase third-party app to do this feature. So overall I would say this camera performed really well. The images are very good, the color handling is very good, the video was also pretty decent, and I would say for the price point of 10,000 rupees, this is indeed a very good smartphone, and definitely recommended. Hope you liked what you just saw, and if you did, please make sure that you hit the thumbs up button and subscribe if you haven't already. Please share it with your friends and on your social media. And most importantly, if you want to see any specific video, make sure that you write it in the comment section below. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next one.